The 1968 exhibit is a major traveling exhibition that we have developed at the Minnesota History Center in partnership with 3 other museums around the country. Chicago Historical Society, the Oakland Museum of California, and the Atlanta History Center. And together, we applied for and received National Endowment for the Humanities funding a few years ago to do this exhibit. But we're the people who are curating and making the exhibit. It starts in October here, and once it finishes its run here in the winter of 2012, we will put it on the road, and it's going to go to several cities around the country. This is my generation. I remember the year extremely well. It's the year I graduated from high school. It's the year I went to college. I went to college in Chicago 2 weeks after the end of the Democratic National Convention, where feelings were still running very high. I remember opposing the Vietnam War and doing marches. I remember the music. I remember the hair. I remember the clothes. For me, personally, it's a memory trip. It's also a way, however, for me to kind of, as a historian, to look into some more of these more pressing issues about what does this mean? We're still today arguing about the meaning of the 1960s and the protest. And we're still today arguing about why we were in Vietnam. It's not a closed subject, unlike World War II. It's still these fractures, these fissures still run through American society. We saw it in the election of 2008, when you've got kind of the old and the new running against each other, and this sort of polarities and the polarization of American society that we feel today so strongly. Well, the roots of that really are in 1968. An American journalist, Michael Arlen, called the Vietnam War the living room war, and that kind of stuck. It was the war that came into people's living rooms every night on television. And the violence, the tragedy, the upheaval of the Vietnam War, the body count, the sheer shocking size of the loss of life came crashing into American living rooms every single night. And in a way, unlike any other war before or since. And people felt, the Americans back home felt like they were experiencing that war firsthand, thanks to the medium of television. So we really wanted to bring that home. So you walk in the exhibit, the very first thing you see, you're in January, the very first thing you see is a helicopter in a living room, an American living room, because we wanted to get across the idea of the living room war, that the Vietnam War was called the living room war because it was the violence and the tragedy was brought home every night on television to people. And that's, the Tet Offensive begins at the end of January 1968. Well, because so many history museums have a kind of regional mission or a specific mission to tell the story of their place, there really aren't that many conceivable history exhibits that kind of cross lines that people could imagine taking place in a regional history museum like Chicago or Atlanta. But because 1968 was such a universally experienced American story, we see that history museums around the country have taken a lot of interest in this. They really think that their people, their audiences, will see themselves in this exhibit. They will have those memories of 1968, and even if they don't, this younger generation, the generation in the 20-somethings, if you will, or the teenagers today, are all learning about the 1960s. They're fascinated with the 60s, with the conflicts, with the music, with the dress, with the drugs, with just the upheaval, the rebellion. So it's kind of an exhibit that crosses all sorts of demographic lines, I think, and we will be really interested to see how it plays out.